Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming to our event here. Winter is coming. And thank you for your patience while we got there. Oh, it's back. Okay, it's back. Okay. Well, we got the equipment here working, so we'll introduce ourselves. We have a presentation and then a little bit of a gear show and tell, and an open discussion. And feel free to, I'm sure everyone here has great tips too, so ask questions at any time, or if there's like a piece of gear you want to mention that you have that you think works really well for this stuff, just don't hesitate to say. So we can have a good discussion going well. I'm Daniel Baxter. I work as a bridge engineer in downtown Minneapolis for Michael Baker International. I'm at the Canadian Pacific Plaza building. We've been downtown at that downtown since 2014. I've been running to get to the office and back, not like every day both ways, but some of the times for 10 years now. Started in 2015, and it's been working pretty well.
I'm Alicia Valenti. I'm a senior project coordinator with Winter Transit's Commuting group. And I've been bike commuting for 7 years, 8 years? I don't know. I got into bike commuting in the summer, and then it got cold, and I didn't want to stop, so I figured it out. Yeah, and then everything else I think we'll get to later.
Do you think we should use the mic?
Oh, yeah, I was just wondering if you could use your mic.
Oh. Hello? Is this better? Okay.
Excellent.
Well, when thinking of, say, if there's winter weather around, which mode to take, I'm at least a kind of timid driver. Like, I just, like, when there's snow coming down or ice on the street, I actually feel, I feel personally more comfortable running or taking transit than driving by a long shot. And I thought Alicia will speak to how she feels about biking here.
Yeah, biking is definitely the superior transportation mode when it's snowing, in my opinion. I think Daniel obviously would say running. That or taking the train, the bus, although we're getting more bus lanes and those help a lot on bad weather days. If it's in mixed traffic, it gets stuck in the traffic. And biking, you're just cruising. Different scenarios work better for different bikes if you're like me and you have multiple or want multiple. So a road or a hybrid bike with studded tires is kind of a nice everyday, easier to ride bike when there's not so much snow on the ground. Same with an e-bike, again, if you have studded tires on those. Once you get more into greater amounts of snow, especially if it's fresh and there hasn't been any plowing yet, that's where the fat bike can become really fun. It is much more work, and so that's definitely a factor. I bike less in the winter because I've just had my fat bike lately, but it is, when there's like 5 inches of fresh snow and you're biking and everyone else is like trying to struggle through traffic, that's really fun. And you can do really well with it without studded tires, unless it's AC, in which case, no matter what bike you're riding, you'll want studded tires. So very fun, strongly recommend. And yeah, we'll get into tips on how to dress for those scenarios.
Thanks, Alicia. Well, I would argue, I think that, to me, running is the superior transportation mode. In the winter, I originally had green check boxes for all of these different winter weather conditions. Hannah was a little skeptical of my claims there, but as we'll see, I do feel it works pretty well, even though you might be thinking, hey, running in an ice storm, what could possibly go wrong, right? But like with spiked shoes, it's worked pretty well for me. When there's like a lot of fresh snow, often the trails aren't plowed, and I try not to do this, but with a reflective vest, I've usually been able to run in the road because like cars will pack down the snow enough that even if there's 10 inches of fresh snow on the trail, there's 10 inches of fresh snow on the trail, there's less on the road, so you can still get where you go. So I feel it works great, and particularly high winds or cold, I just don't really have to worry about what's going on. well, you might be asking yourself just like, what is run commuting? I'm not sure if it's the most widespread term out there. Well, I think of it as like whenever you're just running for transportation to get somewhere rather than just ending up where you started. So just any kind of point-to-point run to get somewhere is transportation. I got into it as a way to train for races during the time that I was spending originally commuting on public transit, because it was, roughly comparable. I was taking, like, I'm in the Longfellow neighborhood of Minneapolis, near sort of near 42nd Street and West River Parkway, and it's about 6.2 miles to get downtown here to my office. And my transit route was to take what was the Route 23 at the time to the Blue Line, and I mean, just depending on when the bus comes, whether it arrives at 38th Street Station, it would be about like 40 minutes or so, and the run takes 10 to 15 minutes longer, so it fit in about the same block of time. And my wife and I, we had just had our first child. She was 3 months old after I ran my first marathon, not very well, pretty slowly, and I realized, like, hey, if I actually want to be able to do this better, I should be getting more mileage in, and this seemed like a good way to do that, and that's been working well ever since, and now I just like to do it anyway, whether or not I'm training for a race or not. I've also found it a pretty useful way to get around if I'm doing like a trip with a number of different segments, like if I'm working downtown, and then let's say I go to the University of Minnesota for an event, and then I need to get home from the University of Minnesota. Well, I can take the Green Line to the University of Minnesota pretty easily, but then it's faster for me to run back to Longfellow than to take the Green Line to another bus, or to head out to the A line or something like that. So I found it pretty useful that way, and or even like say a destination where biking feels unsafe. I'm probably a more timid bicyclist than some, but at least those strip malls on Ford Parkway in St. Paul, pretty near our house, there's good shopping there, but it's a place with all those driveways, and Ford Parkway's busy. I don't really like biking there, and I don't really like driving there. But I do feel pretty comfortable running there on the sidewalk. It's just about 2 miles away from my house, so I can run there, pick stuff up in my backpack, and come back. But the subject of this talk, and the thing that really works well for me, is I've been mentioning, is just winter weather, because I feel it's a great way to get around in the winter. So we'll be talking about soon, but just some general logistics that have worked well for me. It does, for this to work, I feel like a number of things do need to kind of come into alignment. If you're going to the office, it is nice to have a shower at the destination. Probably your coworkers would appreciate that. I'm fortunate enough to work in an office building that has nice showers on the first level. I have a front loader cargo bike that I'm able to just bring the clothes I need to the office with on Monday morning. So I'll just bring all the clothes I need for the week, and that works well for me. It did take a little bit of time to get used to running with a backpack. It's just not something probably most runners, I imagine, would love doing, but I think just, it just takes a little while to get used to it, and just once you get used to doing it, I barely notice it's there anymore. And just the more experience you get, you can plan sort of in advance just what you need, and not carry a ton of stuff. I still hate like running with shoes in my backpack. Sometimes, for whatever reason, I'll need to take my dress shoes back to the office, and I still don't like that. But most of the time it's fine. It is good too if you're getting into this, if it's a destination where you can take transit one direction. I think sometimes maybe people think of run commuting and think like, oh, I have to run both ways every day, and I feel like that's not true at all. There's no reason to feel like you need to do that. So I'm lucky enough if I just want to not have like a billion miles a week, or not feeling it, or for whatever reason, I can take the 9 back to my house very easily from downtown, or take it there and run away. So I feel like that works really well. The thing I would recommend if somebody's interested in trying it is to just start with a one-way trip home from your place of employment, because like all your your shower, all your stuff's at home, of course, so it's, I feel like it's just logistically easier than like arriving at like your workplace for the first time, having run there and then trying to get everything sorted out. And I do, just regular strength training has helped me out. Like when I started doing that in 2018, you probably wouldn't know it by looking at me, but like when I started doing that in 2018, I did find it's just easy. I feel like it's easier to just go up hills with a backpack full of stuff, slow down less. Just any strength training you do for your lower body, particularly like the way I tend to go to the office is on the West River Parkway Trail, and there's some up and down on that trail. Usually one big hill every way to get up from Bohemian Flats to downtown. And since I started the strength training, I found that it's quite a bit easier to just like a backpack up that. In terms of like logistics, that's worked for me. I have this little simple IKEA clothes rack in my office that hang up my clothes at the start of the week so they don't get too rumpled, and I can keep like towels for the shower, my lower layers in an office drawer, out of sight most of the time there, so that works pretty well. In terms of the winter run commuting gear, just multiple thin layers rather than just big bulky layers I found like works best, and they're easy to add and remove. Find as many things you can out of wool. That it really seems to be this wondrous material that does not accumulate odor and can dry. I found that if I hang it up in an empty office, that's one nice thing about hybrid workplaces these days. Is that at least my office, there always seems to be an empty office. Is that I can hang it up. Hang up my like wool clothes in an empty office, and it'll have dried by the time it's time to go home. So that's a nice thing about them too. Really do recommend finding spiked shoes for if there's ice or fresh snow over ice, particularly when you can't see the ice. It probably makes. I think everyone would think this, but to minimize exposed skin below 0 degrees, that seems to be a good cutoff for me. But bicyclists always say this too, I think, but it's better, in my opinion, you probably want to start off feeling a little cool rather than feeling warm right away working out the door, because I've found that like if you feel warm right away, then you're probably going to start overheating, and it's, I think it's just I find somewhere around like a mile or a mile and a half is usually the time, like my hands seem to be the last thing to warm up. That's usually when they've warmed up if I'm wearing like the correct weight gloves. And I'm someone at least that I find music pretty motivating for these winter conditions, so that, different people are different about that, but I feel like finding the right music can actually be pretty important. And in terms of gear that works for me, I don't want to sound like a corporate spokesman for Smartwool, but their stuff works pretty well. Lots of wool, to me, probably to most people, like you want to keep your ears warm and your hands warm and your face warm, because I feel like if your ears are cold, it's just hard to keep. It's hard to be content on your commute or ride. So I'll always wear an earband under a hat. Usually if it's 20 degrees or lower, I'll wear a balaclava too. And then if it's below 0, and I'm trying not to have like any exposed skin, then there's this product called the Cold Avenger face mask. It's this thing right here. And I guess it's their core customers or people doing things like industrial things in the Arctic, and like what it does is this sort of will let your breath kind of accumulate in front of this this thing right here. So it's it actually I'm surprised how warm it feels wearing this thing, and then I'll pair it with ski goggles so eyes don't free up. The ski goggles can be a little irritating. Like one thing about it is it does channel your breath away, which does reduce the ski goggles from fogging up, but I've yet to completely figure out something where the ski goggles never fog up under any conditions. So that can still be irritating, but the Cold Avenger works well. For the upper body, I really like Tracksmith makes these, they call them the Brighton base layer. These are like long sleeve wool shirts. They'll dry over the course of a day when I hang them up. I wish they reintroduced something called this run-commute jacket that they introduced in August 2020, which was probably the worst time ever to introduce a collection of run-commuting clothes. But then, no surprise, I guess it didn't do so well, so they discontinued it. But I emailed them and please reintroduce your collection because it's such a great jacket. It's made out of wool. It will dry over the course of a day and it's like perfect temperature for like when it's in the 30s and the 40s, and then when it's a lot colder than that, it's a good middle layer. Usually when it's below 30, I'll just have a thicker running jacket. Craft makes nice winter running jackets. And then for when it's really cold, for me, below, say, minus 15, I found just putting a light raincoat, a light rain coat for running over everything, just kind of insulates everything and works pretty well. You'll want to have a backpack. This was, I think it's at the back of the room if you want to see it. I've tried a few. My favorite running backpack is this, it's called a Mission Workshop Time with Tracksmith backpack. It was introduced as part of their run commuting collection and then again sadly discontinued, but it still might be available on Poshmark or something like that. My current Tracksmith run commuting jacket was used because I left my original one on the plane and Delta couldn't find it, but I'm continually on the lookout for a second one so that I can launch one and have a second one. But this backpack works real well. The key to any, I feel like other people make running backpacks. I feel like the key to any running backpack is you need two straps, a top one and a bottom one, so it doesn't start twisting around, because you do not want to be running while it's twisting back and forth. That just feels terrible. But with two straps, that doesn't happen, so it just keeps it pretty locked down. And there are others on the market too that will do that, and it doesn't stick too far out, so your center of gravity is still pretty close to your back. And this one actually has a second compartment, so you can have a water bladder if you want in it. So during the pandemic, I used it for a couple virtual marathons for carry water around it, which was, I don't recommend doing a virtual marathon ever. It was not a pleasant experience, but it does. This one does have that feature. So if you wanna take it to use for water for a long training run, you can do that too. Keeping your hands warm, I feel is really important. For me, these light gloves work well for 30 degrees and above. Different companies make them. I just got these at REI. Then it's good and nice to have a middleweight pair of gloves for say I find these are good for 30 degrees and lower. When it gets 0 degrees and lower, I like to have really heavy gloves. Head makes these heavy insulated gloves with I don't know if it's cotton, it's some kind of insulating material inside. But I feel if you're wearing heavy gloves though that have that insulating material inside, I feel you always want to have a pair of lighter gloves as a second layer, because that insulating material gets wet from sweat. It just takes forever to dry and gets super nasty, at least I think so. Having just a lighter pair of gloves to stop the sweat from getting on that insulating material works pretty well. I would recommend. Keeping the lower body warm, pretty important. Duluth Trading Company makes these, they call them, I think, these heavyweight merino boot socks that I don't think they're designed for running, but I just love these things. They work so well. They've kept my feet warm down to below minus 20 degrees, and if I wear them on a morning like today where it's in the mid-30s, they're not too hot either, so they're like these magical socks that have these magical properties, and I don't know how this works, but they're great. So if you can find them, I'd recommend them. The Duluth Trading Company also makes what they call the buck naked base layer pants. It's sort of, they're kind of long johns. I don't think they're probably intended for running either, but I found that below, I'd say 15 degrees or so, they're really nice to have. And yeah, there's certainly, you can imagine parts of your lower body that you really don't want to get cold, and they'll help prevent that. On that same subject, you want to either get a what's called a wind brief as your lower layer, or I've found actually that these the Tracksmith makes these lined turnover half tights that are intended for for warmer weather running, but I found that these actually work better than wind briefs because they're like really snug on you and keep off the wind even better than a wind brief does. So I'd recommend looking into those as your lower layer. And in terms of running pants, I like Kraft or Smartwool make nice ones, and they're either one of those works pretty well for me. In terms of feet, but if I'm running on just compacted snow that doesn't have ice, I typically won't wear spikes because the feeling of just spike. I mean, it's not the most comfy ride if there are spikes, particularly. At least for running downtown, the last mile, the landlords downtown are really good about clearing the snow and ice off their sidewalks. So even if the river trail is compacted snow, the last mile is always on pavement usually, unless it has just snowed. So if I can get away with not wearing spikes, I will. And Hoka makes these nice Speedgoat Mid GTX running boots that are both really lightweight, they look like they'd be in the photo probably really bulky to be running around in, but they're surprisingly lightweight, and they also have a nice cushion to them too. But if it is icy or there's ice or there's deep snow or some combination of that, I'll put on these. One I saw these Salomon snow spikes that they're called that they have really deep lugs and spikes on them. I saw one online reviewer refer to these as the nuclear option for winter running, and they'll work pretty well. But the spike, they're not the comfiest to run in on dry pavement, but when you need them, then they're great. Another option, I really like Catula Nano spikes. I once got a pair of Yak Tracks that disintegrated instantly or after less than a month, so I don't recommend those. But these Catula Nano spikes, you can slip them on these boots. They'll have spikes too, and good to take along if you're unsure what the conditions may be, or if you think they might worsen in the day, and that way you can take them on and off as you need. In terms of gear versus temperature, as I mentioned, I feel these sort of 15-degree ranges, different or have different requirements. When it gets below 15 degrees, it's when you start throwing on the base layer pants and the jacket as a middle layer. Once it gets to 0 degrees, and you try to have no exposed skin, so up comes the Cold Avenger, and then below 15, minus 15, there's not a lot of mornings like that, but then putting on that light rain jacket as a top layer works pretty well. And then just a few examples of winter running. This was in January 2020. Where there was this big snowstorm that was predicted to hit on a Friday afternoon. All my coworkers had left early to try to avoid it, but I was like, I don't care, I'll stay until I'm just gonna leave anyway. And there was about probably about 3 to 5 inches of snow on the trail. I used the snow spikes with the typical winter gear, and it didn't have any trouble at all. Just not the fastest running pace ever, but was able to keep a decent pace through the snow and arrived home for our family dinner on time. Another one I remember was just I woke up and was surprised that the driveway was covered in ice, so I turned around and put on I barely walked out the door, put on the snow spikes, ran at a fairly leisurely 10-minute per mile pace, because running on ice, even with the spikes, you don't want to go too crazy, and arrived at the office on time. But I was surprised. I think none of my coworkers were able to get there for maybe over an hour and a half, because bus service was suspended that morning because of the ice. I remember James, you were stuck at home until they resumed, but that worked out pretty well. Earlier this year, I think it was our coldest morning, was minus 19. Out came the Cold Avenger that would work fine. I do recommend just taking off the ski goggles if you're doing this for the last mile, because it's just easier to see around you when you're crossing all the downtown streets with, cars turning right and things like that. But if you're on a trail, there's not too much other people, there are not too many bikes or other people on the trail if it's -19, so I don't have to worry about running into them.
All right, so for biking, I put this together kind of assuming a base level of familiarity with bike commuting. In general, must-haves, helmet, lock, and lights. Also, especially in the winter, you want to keep your headlight on a steady beam. Flashing makes it harder to judge someone's distance from you and how fast they're approaching you. I wish I could tell that to any person that I see with the flashing light on. Like with running, recommend trying your route after work or on a weekend when you don't have that time pressure to get in, get settled at your desk, to work out any kinks in it. You can also pair with transit to save a little effort or time. And then I'd say I'm a rack and pannier or basket evangelist. I initially biked with a backpack, and it's just not comfortable to have the extra weight. You get extra sweaty. Number one investment after those first three is to, I think, get the rack and panniers. And if you don't want to throw a whole bunch of money into this, and if you're not sure you're going to like it or keep doing it, Twin Cities Bicycle Trading Post is a great resource. Lots of really good stuff here, especially with kind of the economic hub of bike things that are produced in the Twin Cities. Some additional tips, if you are looking at fat biking specifically, you can find a bus with a fat bike friendly rack using the Pantograph app. I am pretty confident that buses in the 1800s with their numbering should have the racks, and so that's the Beluga buses. That's our newest bus procurement, and then the ones that we bought last year should also have them, and I think those are also in the 1800s in their numbering. So you can download the Pantograph app, check the bus ID. I'm not going to guarantee you 100% these are the correct numbers, but as general guidance, this is how you can figure out if you might get a fat bike rack. And as we buy more buses and update our fleet, they'll be more and more common throughout. So we're making progress there. And then for gear, like Daniel said, you'll want to be prepared to be cold the first 10 minutes or so of your ride, otherwise you are going to overheat. I think layers are important, and also just like ventilating gear, I think is probably more of a thing with biking than running. So hat or a buff to keep your ears warm is important. You can be like my partner, you can get this winter helmet that's shown on the left. It seems really nice. I have not sprung for one for myself. Goggles or wraparound glasses, and I'll talk more about when those both make sense. And then again, you want to minimize your exposed skin below 0 degrees, and honestly, even 10 or 20, everything with running, I just act like it's, like for running, you need to dress like it's 10 degrees warmer compared to biking because you're going faster on a bike. And then if you're on an e-bike, like another 10 degrees because you're not creating as much core heat and you're going faster. And then you also want to consider ways to increase your visibility, and I'll talk some more about those as well. So first up for your head. Sorry, now you can see the winter helmet on the left. I have speaker view. You can consider a winter helmet. I recommend, a cap or a buff. I am also not a Smart Wool marketing person, nor am I a 45 North marketing person. They just make really good stuff, and so buy it and use it. The buff is very flexible because you can cover your ears, you can use it to cover your neck, or kind of put it on as a balaclava. So you have some flexibility, especially if conditions change throughout the day. I got this Flamicaster hat, I don't know if that's how you say it. That's also really nice and cozy and goes well with the buff for kind of full head and neck warmth. The glasses are nice for about 30 degrees and below, or if it's really windy in the 30s, just to keep your eyes clear and not be crying from just air in your face. And then ski goggles, probably around in the teens is when I start to switch over to those. not only for eye protection, but also just to keep my face warmer. And then for upper body, this is really up to you, and my recommendations are partially informed by the fact that I do winter bike stuff that isn't just commuting, so I'm, going out on fat bike trails, hanging out in the cold for a while. So take what you want from this. But I like a smart wool base layer. I got this ski jacket from Midwest Mountaineering, RIP, a few years ago, and that's been really nice because it has a bit of insulation, and then you have pit zips so you can cool off as you warm up. So once you've warmed up on your ride, you can get a little air circulation. It has a hood, which is nice for if it's snowing, just throw that up and keep my hair dry. And then I just got this 45 North Not Wind jacket, which is more of a shell, but that's really nice for when it's windy or just as an added layer when it's chilly. And then for hands, I'm often just wearing my regular Patagonia gloves. You want to make sure that you have something that'll block wind and not just like a knit that will let air through. So I've been using those for also like 6 or 7 years. And those are good down to the 30s-ish, maybe lower if your hands don't get as cold as mine. For below freezing, I start using 45 North Sternbist gloves, or I like to call them lobster gloves because they combine your fingers. Those are good for keeping yourself warmer, especially with glove liners. And then if you really want to get into it, you can get some pogies. I have these 45 North Cobra Fists, but there are other options available as well for both flat bars and drop bars, depending on what your needs are. And those honestly do enough that you can wear a very, very light glove or no glove, depending on the temperature. So those are a really great investment that I took many years to make. And then lower body, again, this is more about how much time are you spending outside. If you're just biking a few miles to work, maybe less important to do something like these Bontrack or open winter pants, but if you're outside for a longer time or you have a longer commute, or if it's just like actively snowing, these are nice to have. Smart wool base layer pants, also nice for keeping your lower body warm. And smart wool socks. And one that I remembered but do not have is that my friend told me they make like bike pants that just keep the front of your thighs covered for when it's snowing / raining, and I think that's really nice because that's what gets wet on your lower body, and then you're not, blocking off ventilation and everything from the rest of your legs. So that's also an option. And then for shoes, you can just wear regular boots. I wore these Tevas on Saturday for an adventure ride where I was outside for like 8 hours, and my toes never got cold, which never happens for me. So that was really cool. Would recommend for a casual option to keep your toes cozy. And then for more of a commute situation, and I have these Carno winter shoes with 2 bolt cleats, so if you're clipping in, that's a good option. And then got these 45 North and Red Wing collab wolf hammers. Those are also cleat boots, but you can walk around in them and go hiking, that sort of thing. Might need to be oiled, but those were a great Facebook find. So lots of options out there, but again, you don't have to overcomplicate it. You can just wear regular shoes. And then visibility, of course, is really important in the winter because we get like 10 hours of daylight. So a few options. I have this safety pizza at the top left. It helps increase your taillight visibility instead of just being a little dot of red light. It kind of diffuses the light to make it more visible. I also have these spoke lights for visibility from the side. There are lots of options for those online. I noticed it because I was driving one night many years ago, approaching an intersection, and I saw like the shadow of a cyclist cross in front of me, and I was like, oh, I'm looking for cyclists typically, and I barely saw you. And that inspired me to up my lighting on my bike. And then if you want to throw on a vest, it's not something I've done, but there are rechargeable LED vests. You could do a regular high-vis vest just to, again, increase your visibility, especially kind of upper half of your body for drivers to see. And another one that I just thought of is like a light that can go on your helmet is another way to, again, get your light sources higher up off the ground for better visibility. And then very loose guidelines on bike commute gear and temperature. When it's in the 30s, I'm doing my basic, like jacket, pants, boots, gloves, buff. And as you decrease in temperature, obviously you want to increase your covering. So, you know, there's a lot of trial and error in this. And what works for me might be a little different than what works for you, but you know, with time, you get a feel for what makes sense for you. My partner is wiser than I am. He takes notes on different days with different weather, and he's like, here's what I did. This is what worked, and this is what didn't. And I'm like, oh, I should also do that. I haven't, but in general, this is what I've learned for myself. And yeah, there's plenty of ways to figure out, plenty of options to make something that works for you. And then my case studies, so this was not an actual commute because it was Christmas Eve and 2020, but I just needed to get out of the house. The day before this ride, we've gotten 8 inches of snow. It was, it feels like, -6. And this was, again, shout out to the Twin Cities Bike Trading Post. I got this bike for like $100. It already had soda tires and fenders, full front suspension, perfect winter ride. So it was just really nice to get out, ride a bit slower than normal, but feel very secure. It was later stolen out of my garage and I never got it back. I still mourn that, but thank you for your sympathy. And then another one from March of 2022, we'd just gotten 3 inches of snow. It was in the low 20s and sunny. The roads had been fairly cleared. I wasn't going very fast. I don't know what I was doing. But my commute was only 2 miles, so going 5 miles an hour was fine. And I was on time for work in this bike ride. And it was just a really nice way to enjoy the sunshine, see the fresh snow. I think that having an active outdoor thing to do in the winter is a really good way to make it more tolerable and fun as a season versus just staying inside and being sad. And then sometimes bikes aren't the best option, and that's okay. So last January, there was a day where it was like actively sleeting and snowing. There's snow on the ground. I'm pretty sure it was also AC this morning. And I was like, yeah, I still want to ride my bike to work. It's 6.5 miles into, what did I say here, like a 10+ mile an hour wind. Felt like -20. I was riding parallel to the blue line, and at several points I was like, I could take the train, but I'm not going to. And it took me like 10 minutes longer than usual to get to work, and then leaving work, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. And I just biked to the train and took that home. It was much nicer. But it was still kind of a fun thing to do, and also shout out to a bike bus or bike transit combo as a way to just make life easier when you need it. And probably most of you are wiser than me and wouldn't try to do this. So most winter commuting is much easier and nicer, but I figured I'd share one less good example. And that's all I had.
Well, thanks, Alicia. And Move Minneapolis has a really nice winter resources webpage with a number of different articles on it. You can get to the page by scanning this QR code if you'd like, or I'm sure if you just search for it, it will come up too. We're going to have the slides from this presentation on that page too, or if you would like an emailed copy of the slides, you can just write down your email here, and I'll be sure to send them to you. Well, thanks. Just like to acknowledge John from Move Minneapolis, who helped organize the event along with Jordan from Hennepin County. Thanks so much, and thanks Alicia for presenting and coming to this, and Catherine from Move Minneapolis as well, who helped with the organization. And thanks very, very much to all of you for attending. So we still have a little time. If you'd like to stick around, there our snacks in the back, or to take a look, because I think the next official thing on the agenda was gear show and tell, which we incorporated some of during our presentation. But if if you have any questions or anything, or want to take a look at any of the gear, and Eric?
Yeah, I have a question. Alicia, first. Rust, salt. How do you take care of that on your bike?
If you're a responsible bicycle owner, you can rinse off your bike after a ride. I don't. Jake does, and then he roasts me for my lack of maintenance. I've also read, actually Dan Marshall recently had a piece about this in Streets of Men about actually winter bike maintenance, and I want to say that he recommends, I think like a water vinegar mix that it stays liquid at lower temperatures, and so he'll use that to rinse salt and everything off his bike. I think also if you leave it outside and snow's not constantly melting and re-icing, it's less of a risk, but I would say find a way to rinse the bike after riding, at least on a semi-regular basis. Give it a wipe down. Lube your chain at least like once a week, if not more often. Oh.
Start doing that.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, I'm not the best person to speak on it because I'm not good about doing it. That's the general idea. Yeah.
So you talked about the gear and what you wear. Can you share a little bit about where you park your bike when you get to work? Do you have secure bike parking?
Yeah, well, we will have secure bike parking. Metro Transit's Hayward office is on the tail end of some renovations, so we've had outdoor bike parking during that project. But once it's done, we will have interior, I think, horizontal and vertical racks. So if you have a bike that you're like an electric bike which weighs 70 pounds, you don't want to put that one vertical. So we'll have horizontal racks for that. But if you're just riding a regular lighter bike, you can hang that vertically or leave it horizontal if you don't want to do the whole lift situation. So, short version, we will have secure bike parking at Haywood soon.
Well, I'm at Canadian Pacific Plaza, it's at 120 South 6th Street, and they have a fantastic bike room in the basement that's secure. You need you need a badge to get into it, but you also need the leasing office to like give you access to get into the bike room. It's the access is large enough in there that I can get my front-loading cargo bike into there, in and out of there pretty easily. Which I mean, this is like a really long bike, and I can just then lock it up to posts in the floor. Yeah, it's if anyone ever wants to take a look at it as an example, if you're trying to get your building to install secure bike parking, just let me know, because I think they've done a really nice job with it. And there's even valet parking in the basement, and the valet guys will like open the door for me if they're around, and they're super nice. So it's hard to imagine better bike parking. Yeah.
I've never biked in the winter, so can you talk about like, do you like when you're actually riding your bike and there's like snow and ice and stuff, like do you do it differently than when it's like July?
I'm definitely more cautious, especially if it's fresher snow or later in the season. You'll get ice ruts kind of on the edge of the bike lane, and so you want to be more cautious of that. I think that's also where a fat bike can be really handy, because you just have a wider footprint with the ground, and so it's easier to keep your balance with those irregularities. I think also with a regular bike, as long as you have at least one studded tire, if you're only doing one, I would put it on the front. That makes a huge difference in how stable you are on ice and in snow, and you can kind of like cut through a lighter snowfall, like 3 inches or less, with the skinnier tire. I am more cautious, especially in a bike lane adjacent to cars versus on the trail, or on like the greenway where you don't have to worry about sliding out and getting hit. And again, it's, start out cautious, and then you kind of get a feel for what works on that day for you, or in general for you, in terms of speed and everything.
Can you share a little bit about snow removal and your experience with the various trails that you take in?
I'll start. Trails are great because those do get plowed, and even if there's a little bit of snow left, it's much less. It's only bikes and runners or walkers who are compacting it, so it's a pretty friendly environment. Again, on the roads, it can be much more iffy, especially if people don't move their cars during a snow emergency and they get plowed around. That snow kind of just stays in the bike lane. And as people kind of drive and create ruts in the road, that impacts what's usable of the bike lane. It winds up catching just some of the debris, and so you have to navigate that. Really big fan of kind of the increased number of sidewalk level bikeways and the two-way separated bikeways like on Bryant and on Hennepin downtown, because those tend to have better snow clearing and you're not dealing with what cars are pushing to the side. And there are also times where it just makes more sense to be in the lane because that's kind of what has clear pavement. Drivers don't love it, but if you don't have a great choice between a clear pavement in the road and kind of a bumpy experience in the bike lane, it's, you know, judgment call on what feels more comfortable for you.
Thanks. Because my primary experience is just taking the West River Parkway Trail to downtown. I find that the park board usually seems to plow it between about like 6 and 6:30 in the morning. So if if I need to get to the office sooner than that, and there's been a snowstorm, typically I'll run. I won't try to bike just because of that. I've found that they'll usually only plow it in the mornings, my experience. So if there is a snowfall which happens during the day, then usually it won't be plowed going home. So I mean that's something to plan for, and that's at least for me where like the running works really well too. Like if I know there's going to be accumulating snow during the day, I'll just plan to run rather than bike. But they do have, the park board does have a nice online map, I think, that shows like where the plows are and what has been plowed. They have that along with in the summer the drinking fountain map. I love both of those maps, and they're pretty cool. So I go, if you're taking trails, I'd familiarize yourself with that map, because that is a helpful way to see if it's been plowed or not.
What's that map?
I don't have the link, but I think if you do a search for like Minneapolis Park Board, like snow plow map, there's a map that shows like where the plows are and if a trail's been plowed or not, and that I feel can be very helpful if you're contemplating, hey, do I bike to the office today or not? I mean, as Alicia said though, I mean that won't help you probably for at least the last mile to get downtown. That can be more iffy.
Yeah, maybe for both of you, just curious if there is a condition or temperature that's your cutoff where you say, okay, now I am going to take transit or I am going to do something else.
There is one, like in January 2019, there was a morning where it was minus 28, and I had laid all my running gear out because I was like, okay, this is going to be a great test to see if this stuff will work. Like, because I'd never used it at a temperature that low, and I was just curious, maybe just as an engineer, like, does this work at minus 28? And so I was planning to run, but I woke up and my wife Hannah had put these Post-it notes around the bathroom saying, "Please don't run." So I was like, well, I'll listen to her, and I did. So that I guess is the answer for me.
I think for me it's about wind. If there's really strong headwind, then that'll kind of be where I'm like, you know what, I don't need to bike today, that's fine. Especially on a fat bike, because you have more resistance to work against. I think 10 miles an hour is about where I start to reconsider, regardless of bike. And in terms of cold, I have not yet fully figured out how to keep my hands warm when it's like single digits or lower, so I'll just be thoughtful about how long I'm going to be outside and how I'm taking care of my extremities in that case. But rain, sleet, snow, I'll often ride. Thanks.
I have a question for Alicia. You're a glasses wearer, I'm a glasses wearer. I have a problem in that I have a really strong prescription, so glasses are not optional. And I also have really dry eyes, and so as soon as the humidity level starts to drop, like in the fall, having that air rushing at my face really exacerbates that. I have not figured out what to do about this, to like either block the wind or, otherwise somehow keep myself comfortable.
I wish I had a better answer because my prescription is like a 0.5 or 0.75, so I just take off my glasses. But I want to say that they do make goggles that fit around them, and I think that there are prescription options, but I'm not super familiar.
I'll let you know.
Daniel, I was going to ask you, I think bike commuting is a little bit more popular than run commuting in winter. How did you figure it out? Was it all on your own, trial and error, or was there other individuals in the metro area, nationwide, you reached out to for advice?
There was an article in streets.mn. There's like one other guy I know who does this. I think he's a professor at the University of Minnesota named Evan Roberts, and he wrote. I would love to meet him someday. He wrote an article, I think in 2014 in streets.mn about his experience doing that, and I think I read his article when I was thinking hey, is this something that I could do in 2015 when I started, and the tips there worked really well. So so there's at least one other person in there. But I remember his article said like many of the same things I've come to find out. Like I think he observed that like the winter weather didn't really concern him or slow him down very much, or just bad weather of any kind. So it was a really useful article.
I was having a thought on the biking gear, and you mentioned the pants, and I don't know if those winter pants go over other pants you would wear or not, but okay. So yeah, I wear just like a regular, I like inherited some snow pants from my uncle from like the 90s, like Reebok snow pants, and I just wear those over my pants, and they're really great because when you get to work, it's super easy to take off. You don't have to like take off your other pants to get at your long underwear or whatever. And so having the insulating layer over top I found to be like really useful for commuting, and then also you can wear your nice pants and any mud and splatter is getting on your snow pants versus your other pants.
I have thought about riding with snow pants. I have not done it, but I think it would like make my life better, especially on like outdoor adventure-y days and where we're standing around a bit. So I like the thought. I think if I had sized up on the old man winter pants, they would go better after. They would fit better over like dress pants. But that's also, my commute is about 7 miles, and that's enough that I'm gonna change no matter what. And so being in a situation where I'm wearing like, the wool base layer and the old man winter pants versus just having my regular pants doesn't really make anything more convenient, I guess, in my case.
I have had some luck with the cargo bike, just biking in the clothes I'm gonna wear in the winter at my destination with like ski pants over them, like an insulated layer of ski pants over them, and just wearing those Duluth Trading Company, like the buck naked base layer under my regular pants, like they don't, they're thin enough, they don't make my like pants like pull up or something like that. So that can work, but I feel like probably 9 times out of 10 when I'm going to the office, I change out of the clothes I'm wearing to bike. Anything else? Well, thanks again. Or if anyone would like to share like their favorite piece of gear that we didn't mention. You're thinking like, oh, they didn't say this one thing that works so well on it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, thanks so much for coming. Yeah, grab some more food if you want. And yeah, let me know if you'd like a copy of the slides and check the Minneapolis Interchief's website.
Thank you.
Thank you.